The missed connection. Olivia Bennett glanced at her watch for the fifth time in as many minutes, her heel tapping an anxious rhythm against the floor of the taxi. The digital clock on the dashboard read 4:47 p.m. Her flight to San Francisco departed at 5:30. Is there any way around this traffic? She asked the driver, who merely shook his head. Construction on the main road. Everyone's being diverted this way. By the time Olivia reached the terminal, breathless and clutching her carry-on, the boarding gate had closed. She stood before the departure board, watching as her flight status changed from boarding to departed. No, 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 she whispered, pressing her fingers against her temples. The conference presentation was tomorrow morning. She had to get there. The airline attendant was sympathetic but firm. The next flight to San Francisco isn't until 9 a.m. tomorrow. I can book you on that one. With her hotel reservation already paid for and her presentation materials prepared, Olivia had no choice but to accept. She wandered toward the airport cafe, feeling untethered. Someone having a worse day than me, came a warm voice as she nearly collided with a man at the cafe entrance. He steadied her elbow with a gentle touch. Sorry, Olivia mumbled, attempting a smile. Just missed my flight. Join the club, he replied, gesturing to an empty chair at his table. I'm Ethan, by the way. Ethan Reeves. Something about his easy smile made her accept the invitation. Olivia Bennett. Ethan had an open face with kind eyes the color of brewing coffee. His dark hair curled slightly at the temples, and he wore a burgundy sweater that looked well-loved. San Francisco, he asked, nodding toward her boarding pass. How did you know? Same flight. Mechanical issue with my cab. He raised his cup in a mock toast. To terrible timing. Over the next hour, Olivia found herself sharing details she rarely divulged to strangers. Her nervousness about the presentation, her recent promotion at the architectural firm, even her childhood dream of designing sustainable housing communities. Ethan listened with genuine interest, occasionally offering insights that suggested he understood more than he let on. He was a composer, he told her, traveling to meet with a film director about scoring a documentary. The universe has a strange way of creating detours, Ethan said as they eventually walked toward the hotel shuttle. Sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way. Home. When they parted at the hotel lobby, having discovered they were booked on the same morning flight, Olivia felt an unexpected pang of regret. See you at the gate? Ethan asked. AM sharp, she confirmed. But when morning came, Ethan's seat on the plane remained empty. And Olivia was left wondering if their brief connection had been nothing more than a pleasant diversion in an otherwise frustrating day. Chance encounters. 3 months had passed since the airport encounter, and Olivia had nearly forgotten about the charming composer with the coffee-colored eyes. Spring had arrived in Chicago, coating the city in a wash of green that softened its steel and glass edges. On a Sunday afternoon, Olivia wandered into Blackstone Books, an independent bookstore tucked between a cafe and a vintage record shop. The scent of paper and brewing coffee enveloped her as she navigated toward the architecture section, fingers trailing along spines of books. A soft piano melody drifted from the store's speakers, something melancholic yet hopeful that reminded her of rain-washed windows and new beginnings. Excuse me, she asked the clerk. What's this music playing? Something from our local artists' collection. Let me check. The clerk squinted at the computer screen. It's Urban Constellations by ER Music. Beautiful, isn't it? Olivia nodded, letting the notes wash over her. There was something familiar about the composition, something that tugged at her memory. As she rounded the corner into the music section, she caught a glimpse of a burgundy sweater, dark curls. Her heart skipped. Ethan? But when the man turned, he was a stranger with a polite smile. Olivia mumbled an apology and retreated, feeling foolish. Why was she disappointed? She barely knew the man, had shared only a few hours of conversation during a travel mishap. Later that week, her colleague Prisha invited her to a dinner party. Just a small gathering, Prisha insisted. My husband's college roommate is in town. He's in the music industry. I think you'd hit it off. Olivia almost declined. Work had been demanding, and social energy felt in short supply. But something, perhaps the lingering melody from the bookstore, pushed her to accept. Prisha's apartment overlooked Lake Michigan, the water a canvas of gold and pink as the sun set. Olivia arrived with a bottle of wine and a bouquet of spring flowers, greeting familiar faces and meeting new ones. "Oh, there he is," Prisha said, waving someone over. "Olivia, this is Daniel's friend I mentioned. Ethan?" The name escaped her lips before she could stop it. He looked as surprised as she felt, those same warm eyes widening in recognition. "Airport Olivia," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "The one who got away, or rather the one who got to San Francisco without me." "You didn't make the morning flight," she said, aware of Prisha's curious glance between them. "Wait, you two know each other?" Prisha asked. "Briefly," Ethan explained, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "I came down with food poisoning that night at the hotel. Couldn't make the flight." "I thought maybe you'd given me a fake name or something," Olivia admitted, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "You two clearly need to catch up," Prisha said with a knowing smile, slipping away to attend to other guests. As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself gravitating toward Ethan, their conversation picking up as though 3 months hadn't passed. He'd moved to Chicago recently, he explained, to work on several projects including a documentary about urban architecture. "Architecture?" Olivia laughed. "That's my field." "I know," he said quietly. "I remembered." When they exchanged numbers at the end of the night, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that this second meeting wasn't mere coincidence. "The universe creating detours," she murmured, echoing his words from the airport. Ethan's smile deepened, or perhaps just course-correcting. Hidden truths, the springtime gradually yielded to summer, and Olivia found herself spending more time with Ethan than she had anticipated. Their connection seemed to deepen with each meeting. Coffee after work, weekend walks along the lakeshore, impromptu dinners where conversation flowed as easily as wine. She discovered his habit of tapping rhythms on any available surface, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed, his preference for bitter chocolate over sweet. "Play something for me," Olivia requested one evening. They sat in his apartment, a modest but warm space filled with plants and books, a baby grand piano commanding the living room. Ethan hesitated. "Any requests?" "Something original," she said, settling onto the couch. "I want to hear what lives in your head." His fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before descending. The melody that emerged was hauntingly familiar, the same piece she'd heard at Blackstone Books. Olivia sat up straighter, watching his hands dance across the keys, creating a soundscape that felt like a conversation between old friends. When the final notes faded, she found her voice. "That was Urban Constellations, wasn't it? By ER Music." Ethan turned to her, surprise evident in his expression. "You know it? I heard it at a bookstore months ago. She hesitated, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "I actually bought the album afterward. It got me through some difficult design challenges for the sustainability project." A curious smile played at the corners of his mouth. "ER Music," he said softly. "Ethan Reeves." The realization washed over her like a wave. "Your ER Music? But why use initials? Why not your full name?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of his discomfort. "I prefer the music to speak for itself without the baggage of personality attached. The documentary score will be different, that'll have my full name." Olivia processed this revelation, recalling the nights she'd spent working to his compositions, finding solace and inspiration in melodies that, she now knew, had come from the man sitting before her. "The day we met at the airport," she said slowly, "you were going to San Francisco for a film meeting. Was that about the architecture documentary?" He nodded. "Directed by Naomi Winters? About sustainable urban development?" "The same one I'm consulting on," Olivia breathed, the pieces falling into place. "We would have met anyway in San Francisco." "Perhaps," Ethan acknowledged, "but not like this. Not as ourselves, just two strangers connecting without titles or professional contexts." That night, walking home under a canopy of stars, Olivia found herself wondering about fate and its mysterious workings. Had the universe deliberately derailed their original meeting to give them this more authentic connection? Was there meaning in the way his music had found her before he did? She recalled a quote from her favorite architect, Tadao Ando, "The emotional connection between a space and the person who enters it is as important as the physical structure." Perhaps relationships work the same way. The emotional architecture mattered more than the planned blueprint. When Ethan texted her later, a simple message appeared on her screen. "Some compositions take time to reveal their full melody. I'm glad we're still writing ours. Olivia smiled at her phone, feeling something shift within her chest, a recognition that what had started as chance was evolving into choice. She was choosing him, choosing this unexpected path that had opened before her when a missed flight had seemed like nothing more than an inconvenience. Little did she know that their composition was about to face its most challenging movement, a dissonance that would test the harmony they had so carefully built. Crossed stars, the summer air turned sultry as July settled over Chicago, the heat rippling off sidewalks and buildings in visible waves. Olivia and Ethan's relationship had blossomed during these warm months, their professional and personal lives intertwining like melody and harmony. The architecture documentary was progressing well, with Ethan's compositions perfectly capturing the essence of the sustainable structures Olivia had helped design. "We make a good team," Naomi, the director, had commented during their last group meeting. "The visual and audio elements are speaking the same language." That evening, Ethan had invited Olivia to dinner at Aurelia, an upscale restaurant overlooking the city. Something about his invitation felt different, more formal, tinged with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. She arrived to find him already seated, looking uncharacteristically tense, a glass of barely touched wine before him. "Everything okay?" she asked, sliding into her seat. Ethan's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let's order first." Throughout the appetizer, he seemed distracted, his usually fluid conversation stilted. Finally, as their main courses arrived, he set down his fork with deliberate care. "I've been offered a position with the Vienna Philharmonic," he said, the words hanging between them like suspended notes. "A 2-year residency as a composer in residence. It's the opportunity of a lifetime." Olivia felt her chest tighten. "Vienna, as in Austria? They want me there by September," he continued, his voice steady but strained. "I'd be working with some of the most talented musicians in the world, developing a full symphonic suite based on urban constellations." "That's incredible," Olivia managed, her food forgotten. "When did you find out?" 3 weeks ago." The words landed like a stone. 3 weeks? "And you're just telling me now?" Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled back. "I needed time to think, to consider all aspects." "All aspects except us, apparently," Olivia said, hurt crystallizing into anger. "Were you going to mention it before or after you packed your bags?" "That's not fair," he countered, frustration edging into his voice. "This is my career, Olivia, the kind of opportunity composers dream about." "I understand that," she said, fighting to keep her voice level. "What I don't understand is why you kept it from me for nearly a month." The conversation spiraled from there, old insecurities surfacing. Olivia's father had left her family for a job overseas when she was 12, choosing career advancement over family stability. The parallel, though different in circumstances, felt too painful to ignore. "I thought we were building something here," she said finally, her voice small. "We are," Ethan insisted, "but long-distance relationships exist for a reason. People make them work all the time, do they?" Olivia picked up her purse. "Or do they just slowly drift apart until they're strangers again?" She left the restaurant alone, tears blurring the city lights into smears of color. The next morning, a bouquet of wildflowers arrived at her door with a note. "Some compositions require distance to be fully appreciated. Please don't give up on our melody." But Olivia didn't respond. In the weeks that followed, she immersed herself in work, ignoring Ethan's calls and messages. When Naomi mentioned that Ethan had completed the documentary score remotely, Olivia merely nodded, professional mask firmly in place. August slipped away, and with it, any hope of reconciliation. On the day Ethan was scheduled to leave for Vienna, Olivia sat in her apartment staring at her phone, wrestling with pride and pain. A text arrived from an unknown number. "Final boarding call for Vienna. Still wishing you were here." Outside, thunder rumbled as summer storms gathered, mirroring the turbulence in her heart. She typed and deleted multiple responses, ultimately setting the phone aside as rain began to fall, washing away the last golden days of summer, and with them, what might have been their chance at love. Written in the stars, winter descended upon Chicago with unusual ferocity, transforming the city into a glittering, frigid landscape. 4 months had passed since Ethan's departure, and Olivia had settled into a rhythm that, while productive, felt hollow at its core. The architecture documentary had won acclaim at several film festivals, though she had declined to attend the premieres, unwilling to face the possibility of seeing Ethan. One blustery December morning, Olivia found herself at O'Hare Airport once again, this time departing for a sustainable architecture conference in Vienna. The irony wasn't lost on her. Just 3 days, she reminded herself as she boarded. Give your presentation and come home. Vienna welcomed her with snowflakes and medieval charm, its streets adorned with Christmas markets and twinkling lights. Her hotel, an elegant converted townhouse, sat just blocks from the Musikverein, where the Philharmonic performed. Olivia had deliberately avoided researching Ethan's schedule, determined to maintain the emotional distance she'd cultivated. After her successful presentation the following day, colleagues insisted she join them for dinner at a local restaurant known for its classical music performances. "We have reservations at Melody," said her colleague Javier. "A pianist is premiering a new composition tonight. Something about urban spaces. Seemed fitting for architects, no?" Olivia felt a jolt of recognition, but dismissed it as coincidence. Surely Vienna had dozens of composers creating works about cities. The restaurant was warm and intimate, its walls lined with vintage musical instruments. As they settled at their table near the grand piano, Olivia glanced at the evening's program. World Premiere, Constellations Reunited by Ethan Reeves. Her heart stuttered. She considered leaving, making an excuse about fatigue or preparation for tomorrow's panel. But before she could move, the lights dimmed, and a familiar figure approached the piano. Ethan looked different, his hair slightly longer, his posture more confident, yet entirely the same. He sat at the bench without introduction and began to play. The melody that emerged was unmistakably derived from urban constellations, but transformed. Where the original piece had been about possibility and chance, this composition spoke of separation, longing, and hope. Olivia recognized fragments of their story woven into the music, the playful notes of their airport meeting, the warm harmonies of summer days, the discordant tension of their parting. As the final movement began, Ethan looked up, his gaze sweeping the room, and stopped when he saw her. Their eyes locked across the dim space, and his fingers never faltered, though something in the music shifted, becoming more urgent, more questioning. The piece concluded to enthusiastic applause. As patrons returned to their meals, Ethan made his way to her table. "Olivia," he said simply, as though her name itself were a complete sentence. Her colleagues, sensing the tension, tactfully engaged in conversation among themselves. "Your new piece is beautiful," she managed. "It's about us," he said quietly, "about how some connections persist across time and distance." They stepped away from the table, finding a quiet corner near the bar. "I've been offered a position at the Chicago Symphony," Ethan said, his voice steady, "starting in January. I was going to call you when I return next week." "You're coming back to Chicago?" Olivia's breath caught. "Vienna has been everything I hoped professionally," he explained, "but empty in all the ways that matter most. I realized something that perhaps I should have known from the beginning. No composition is complete if you're not there to hear it." "I should have answered your messages," Olivia admitted. "Pride got in the way, and my ambition got in the way of honesty," he countered. "But maybe we needed this time apart to recognize what we had found." Outside, snow began to fall again, transforming Vienna into a winter wonderland. Olivia thought about all the coincidences that had led to this moment. A missed flight, a chance dinner party, a music festival in the same city where she had a conference. "Do you remember what you said at the airport?" she asked. "About the universe creating detours?" Ethan smiled, reaching for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. "Some detours are meant to show us the scenic route to where we belong." 3 days later, they boarded the same flight back to Chicago, seated side by side as the plane lifted into the winter sky. Below them, the lights of Vienna receded, but the melody they had begun to compose together continued, no longer interrupted but enriched by the journey they had taken apart. As the aircraft leveled above the clouds, Olivia rested her head against Ethan's shoulder, certain now that some connections, like constellations in the night sky, remain constant, even when clouds temporarily obscure their light. Their story hadn't ended that summer day. It had merely turned the page to a new chapter, one written not by chance alone but by choice, by courage, and by the mysterious alignment of stars that some might simply call love.